Hello everyone. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for following on my YouTube channel. Today I will show you a video how to generate a voice conversation from a textbook, from a paper, or from a website, right? And how to turn that information into an engaging conversation with this generative AI model from Google called Notebook LM. All right. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but in the recent date, Google released the latest feature called audio overview, which is the one that will help you to generate conversations. But not only that, it will also help you to generate content for a podcast if you want to use it in that way. Okay, and now what I will do is first I will walk you through the steps I follow to reach to a point to get that conversation that I needed for this video. Okay, so now what I will do is this is how it looks like, okay, the look and feel of the main screen of this model, okay, so I will just click on here to add the information that I need. So in this case, what I will do is, find the information that I need, either a PDF, a website, or I can just keep the text, copy the text and take it to the conversation with the model. So for this particular case, what I did was just to upload the PDF document. But you can grab the information from the Google Drive, you can grab from the link of a website or paste the text into this model. So once you uh, put this information into the model, you will see a similar interface like this. The model will bring the information, okay? It will make the summary. And then once you have the summary, it will give you here some conversation started to the key topics of this document. Now, here is how it looks like. It is all the information that it extracts from the document on the left side. And on the right side, you will have the notebook guide with a lot of features that you can use to read documents, and similar to what you would do with ChatGPT, right? You have some conversation starters, and but also you can type in and have the conversation and ask questions to the model about the document that you just uploaded. Okay, and what I want to show you here is that uh, two different things that you can use, so features. The first is about using something that is called, conversation starters here. Like for example, I can just click on fact, and the document will take me to the fact section, or it will create a fact small section, right? So that I can dig more into it, or it can create a study guide, for example, right? So if I go to this any of these areas, right? For example, I click on fact, right? And the model created, right, the fact with some questions and answers that will help me to understand more about the topic. Now, I click on the conversation started to generate the study guide. And the document actually created some short answer questions that will help me through my learning about the topic that I want to know about, and some essay questions that are helpful to me, and glossary for some terms that I'm not familiar with, but I want to learn more about. For example, deep learning, interpretability, explainability, and a lot of information related to XAI. Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to show you is that once you have uploaded the document, you can have chat conversation with the model, right? You can ask questions and get answers from the model, similar to what you would do with ChatGPT. Okay. Now, the last part I want to show you is the conversation that it was generated from the model, which is called audio overview. And what does audio what does audio overview means? Okay, so the audio overview future, okay, is is about what to say um, having the model to create two AI agents, okay, or two AI hosts that think about a podcast, for example. Okay, so there are two AI hosts, right, that start off a live conversation, and they make a deep dive discussion on based on the topic or based on the source of information that you uploaded to the model. They summarize the material. They make connections between the topics, and then they start banter back and forth during this conversation. So once that is generated, because it will also depend on the length of the document, right? I uploaded documents that is quite small. It was 7 minutes about, but this one is 52 pages, and it created 12 minutes conversation. And you will hear similar, exactly like a podcast, right? They talk about one topic and they have interactions, right? Back and forth and into an engaging conversation. So at the end, you have here an option to download that content, and some additional things you can do. But you can download that conversation and then take it on the go or use it for other purposes that you may need, either, for example, for learning, right? You may want to learn more and have additional interactions with the model. Well, you can ask more questions and learn more about it. Okay, so this is all about this video. I hope you learn a lot from it, and don't forget to subscribe if you are not, and click on the like. And thank you again for watching. The other thing I want to mention is that I will play this, how to say, the audio that it was recorded from this book. Hopefully, you enjoy the topic about explainable artificial intelligence, that it will give you a lot of great information to understand how AI takes decisions.
Ready to demystify explainable AI? We're diving into the world of XAI today. It's about knowing how AI makes its decisions, which, let's face it, is becoming more crucial than ever as AI weaves itself into, well, practically everything.
Absolutely. And luckily, we've got this, how should I put it, comprehensive research paper to guide us. XAI, Explainable AI, a comprehensive survey on concepts, methods, and challenges. Don't worry, we'll break it down into bite-sized pieces.
Perfect. So, before we get lost in the weeds, let's start with the why. Why all the fuss about AI explaining itself? What's the big deal?
Well, think about it like this. Have you ever, gone to the doctor and they give you a diagnosis but can't really explain why they came to that conclusion?
Yeah, I'd be looking for a second opinion pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Not a great feeling.
Right, you'd want to know what's going on. That's essentially the crux of the issue, the black box problem. We have these powerful AI systems making decisions, sometimes really important ones, but often even the experts are in the dark about the hows and whys.
And when you phrase it like that, it is kind of unnerving,
Yeah.
especially in areas like, say, healthcare or finance.
Yeah.
A wrong decision from an AI in those situations. Yikes.
Exactly. The stakes are high, so this need for transparency, for understanding not just the what, but the why of AI's decisions, is what spurred the whole field of XAI. We're talking trust, accountability, things we value.
Makes sense. And this need for XAI ties directly into how AI has evolved, right?
Yeah.
I vaguely remember reading about different generations of AI.
You're spot on. Just like with technology in general, AI has gone through phases. The first generation was all about rule-based systems thing, early chess programs. Their actions were easy to follow because they were pre-programmed. Then came the second generation machine learning and those black box models. They learn from massive amounts of data, but often at the expense of easily understanding how they operate.
So more power, but less transparency. Classic trade-off. Where does that leave us?
It brings us to the third generation, where XAI steps into the spotlight. Now, it's not just about accuracy. It's about building AI that's both high-performing and explainable.
So this research paper,
Yeah.
it's basically a guidebook to this third generation of AI, right? Laying down the groundwork.
Exactly. It delves into the core of XAI, like what actually makes for a good explanation, the different approaches researchers are exploring, and the hurdles we're still trying to overcome.
I'm curious about the good explanation part. That seems subjective. What I think is clear might be confusing to someone else.
True, but the paper outlines some key characteristics. First off, a good explanation needs to be accurate. No sugarcoating it should genuinely reflect how the AI reached its decision.
No, AI spin doctors. I like it.
It also needs to be understandable to the user. An explanation that flies with a tech expert might not make sense to someone without that background. Then there's conciseness. No one wants pages of jargon.
Yeah, AI, get to the point.
Exactly. And finally, it has to be relevant. No irrelevant tangents or unnecessary details.
It's just the good stuff. Now, one thing that always seems to come up with XAI is this balance between accuracy and interpretability. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. Some AI models are naturally easier to understand than others, like decision trees. Their decision making is very visual, kind of like a flowchart, easy to follow the logic.
Makes sense. Visuals are helpful.
Right. But here's the thing. Sometimes those more straightforward models aren't as accurate as their complex black box counterparts.
So it's a trade-off. A friendly tour guide who knows the area but not all the shortcuts versus a super speedy driver who gets you to your destination but doesn't tell you how they did it.
I like that analogy, and that's the dilemma in XAI. Sometimes accuracy might be paramount, especially in critical applications. Other times, interpretability might be more important, even if it means a slight dip in accuracy.
Finding the right tool for the job. It seems like the key is to be aware of these trade-offs.
Absolutely. And speaking of tools, this paper does a great job of breaking down some key XAI terminology. Think of it as your XAI glossary.
Perfect. Knowledge is power.
It clarifies terms like interpretability, which is about how easily we can grasp the AI's inner workings, and explainability, which focuses on making its decisions clear through, well, explanations.
So interpretability is about understanding the AI's brain, and explainability is about understanding its actions.
Exactly. Then you've got transparency, which relates to how much insight we have into the AI's structure and data, and finally trust, which is the ultimate goal.
AI we can rely on because we understand how it operates. Now we're talking. Now, this paper takes these ideas and introduces a really helpful framework,
Yeah.
the 4 axes of XAI. These axes are going to be our roadmap for this deep dive.
They break down XAI into different but connected elements. It's a great way to approach
It's
it.
okay, you've got me hooked. What's the first axis we're exploring?
All right, so kicking things off, we've got data explainability.
Data explainability, laying the groundwork. Right, making sure we're building on solid
Right,
ground.
exactly. It's about understanding the data itself. You know how the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out.
Applies to AI just as much as anything else.
Absolutely. If you train an AI on iffy data, you can't expect miracles in the output. Data explainability brings in techniques to explore, visualize, and summarize that training data, kind of like putting it under a microscope.
So before we even look at the AI model, we make sure the data itself checks out.
You got it. And the paper highlights some cool tools for this. One that jumps out is Google Facets. It helps you see how the data is distributed, spot potential biases, get a good feel for the overall quality.
Like a data detective's toolkit.
Yeah,
I've heard of Google Facets. It's all about visualization, right? Making the data easier to grasp.
exactly. And one thing that struck me from the paper, it highlighted how data sets with similar stats can look completely different when visualized.
Wait, really? How so? If the numbers are alike, shouldn't the visualizations look the same?
Not always. Imagine you've got two data sets about, say, people's height. One might have a nice bell curve distribution, while the other's got weird spikes or gaps. Both could have the same average height, but the underlying patterns would be totally different. Ah, okay. I see what you mean. Numbers can only tell you so much.
Precisely. It's like data visualization is like turning on a light, revealing hidden patterns that might signal issues or biases.
It sounds like data explainability is all about due diligence, making sure the data itself is reliable before you even start building your model.
Exactly. Solid foundation, better AI.
Makes sense. All right, so we got the data part down. What's next on our XAI adventure?
Now we move from the fuel to the engine itself. Model explainability.
Model explainability. This is about understanding how the AI model actually works, right? Like getting under the hood.
Exactly. And just like with car engines, there are different types of AI models, each with its own level of Transparency?
Some easier to understand than others. Exactly. We talked about decision trees earlier, remember? They're inherently interpretable, meaning their decision-making process is pretty straightforward to grasp.
Easy to trace the logic.
Exactly. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have those complex black box models, like deep neural networks. Their
Yeah.
inner workings, well, they're not so straightforward.
Not as user-friendly.
To put it mildly, model explainability can be tricky with these complex models, but there are techniques being developed to make them more interpretable. For instance, the paper talks about these hybrid models that try to combine the power of black box models with the clarity of simpler ones.
Best of both worlds approach.
Exactly.
So model explainability, it's about making sense of the AI's inner workings, whether it's a straightforward engine or a bit more complex.
Right. And once we have a handle on that, we can look at the AI's actions, which brings us to our next axis, post hoc explainability.
Post hoc explainability. So now we're analyzing the AI's behavior, like watching a game replay.
Great analogy. It's about observing what the AI does and trying to figure out, okay, why did it do that?
So how do we observe an AI's behavior in a way that helps us understand its decisions?
Well, that's where things get visually interesting. The paper talks about a bunch of techniques for post hoc explainability, but two really stood out.
Hit me with them.
First up, class activation maps, or CAMs. Let's say an AI is looking at a picture and trying to identify a bird. CAMs can generate a heat map that highlights the specific areas of the image that the AI was focusing on to make that identification.
Whoa, we can actually see what the AI is paying attention to. That's wild.
It is pretty cool. Then there's sensitivity analysis, or SA. This one's all about tweaking the input data just a little bit and watching how those changes affect the output.
So kind of like a trial and error to figure out what makes the AI tick.
Exactly. By systematically making those little tweaks and observing the results, we can identify which factors are the most important to the AI's decision-making process.
This is fascinating stuff. We're not just taking the AI's word for it anymore. We're getting a behind-the-scenes look at its reasoning.
Exactly. And speaking of reasoning, that brings us to our final axis, which is all about evaluating those explanations we're getting.
Okay, so it's not enough to just get an explanation from an AI. We need to make sure it's a good explanation.
Precisely. This last axis is all about the assessment of explanations.
So how do we measure the quality of an AI explanation? What makes it good?
That's where those metrics come in. Researchers are developing ways to measure things like accuracy. Does the explanation actually match how the AI made the decision, as well as understandability and fairness?
So it's like a checklist for good AI explanations.
Yeah,
Accurate, understandable, and fair.
exactly.
So assessing AI explanations, it's like a quality control step in the
Yeah.
XAI process, right? Making sure those explanations hold up.
Exactly. It's crucial for building trust.
Right.
We can't just accept any explanation an AI throws at us. We need to make sure they're meaningful.
Especially as AI gets more integrated into our lives, makes those big decisions.
Absolutely. And, this paper does a really nice job of emphasizing that XAI isn't just some abstract concept. It's becoming a necessity in the real world.
Especially with the increasing focus on AI ethics and regulations.
Precisely. There's this growing demand for transparency and accountability as AI systems get more and more sophisticated.
So for folks who are just starting to wrap their heads around XAI, does this paper offer any kind of guidance? It feels like a huge field.
It does. It provides a really solid roadmap, one of the key takeaways. Choosing the right XAI method for the situation at hand. What works for explaining a simple decision tree won't cut it for a complex deep learning model.
Right tool for the job. Makes sense.
Exactly. And the paper actually highlights some software tools that are making XAI more accessible.
Oh, so there are resources out there for people who want to dive deeper into this stuff.
Yes, and that's encouraging to see. More tools, more transparency. As for the future of XAI, this paper paints a pretty exciting picture. It really positions XAI as central to how we design, develop, and use AI systems moving forward.
It's not just an afterthought anymore. It's becoming essential.
Exactly. And as AI becomes even more woven into our lives, the importance of XAI is only going to grow.
I've got to say, this deep dive has been eye-opening. We've explored the whole black box problem, those 4 axes of explainability, peeked into the future of XAI.
And hopefully you're feeling a bit more equipped to engage with AI in a more informed, discerning way.
Absolutely. But this is just the beginning, right? There's always more to learn when it comes to AI, more questions to ask, more to explore.
Couldn't agree more. If you found this deep dive intriguing, don't stop here. Dive into that source material. See what resonates with you. The future of AI depends on this kind of critical thinking.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into explainable AI. Thanks for joining us, and as always, keep those questions coming.